Blog Talk Radio.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for choosing KingJordan Radio. The date is Thursday, January 15th, 2015. Tonight on the show, we have a very special guest. She is an icon in the industry of world and news and media. She was a prosecutor in my hometown here in New York City. You've seen her on Court TV, which became In Session. She covered the Jodi Arias case from wire to wire. She covered several cases through her career, and she's joining us out of Phoenix tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, making her debut to KingJordan Radio, the one and only Beth Arias. Good evening, Beth, and welcome to KingJordan Radio. How are you?
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for having me. I am great, although I do wish this Arias retrial would get moving. We're now on a 5-day hiatus.
You on a what hiatus?
5 days.
How long?
No court today, because the defense didn't have any witnesses. There's never court on Friday. There's no court Monday for Martin Luther King Day, which is fine. We always knew that. But this case has met for 11 weeks. Since October 21st. It is supposed to be a 4-day week, Monday through Thursday. 1 week out of 11, it's met for 4 days.
Oh, my God. And if you remember, the regular case was no picnic either with I think that started in the month of, you could correct me if I'm wrong, late January and ended in approximately late May.
Correct. Well, almost correct. It started January 2nd. Opening statements were January 2nd, 2013. We all went home in late May. But that was guilt and penalty phase. So the penalty phase was only a couple of days. Here, the penalty phase now in this retrial is almost as long as the guilt phase because this brand new jury has to learn everything that the first jury knew. They have to accept the guilty verdict. They can't challenge that. They have to accept it, but they need to understand the evidence.
Right. Now, let's talk about this retrial. In order to be qualified as a juror, what did they need to? What were some of the questions given to the jurors prior to them being seated as jurors?
Oh, you are stretching my memory here. This was the beginning of October. I did come for jury selection October 7th, 8th, 9th, I think it was. But unfortunately, we didn't learn a lot about jurors because they're anonymous. We don't know their names, and they filled out questionnaires. So what was questioned in open court was basically the death qualification and whether or not they had exposure to the case and formed opinion. So it was basically weeding out people who, because this is a super saturated community in the case, weeding out people who knew too much about it or couldn't set aside what they knew and had opinions they couldn't set aside, or people who felt they couldn't impose a death penalty. If they could put aside what they knew and they were okay with imposing the death penalty in some types of cases, then they could make it. But we just didn't learn much about them. However, once they were seated, and there were 12 jurors, there are 12 jurors, and there were 7 alternates. But see, the alternates get picked just for deliberation, so there were 19 jurors. One juror dropped out because of a medical emergency before day 1. So on day 1, there was 1 seat already empty. On day 2, another juror got booted after I testified because this juror came out and watched me give a TV interview without her badge on, identifying herself as a juror, and I thought, that's a juror. And then she came up to me afterwards and asked me if I was Nancy Grace. Like, no, I'm not Nancy Grace.
Did that happen a couple of times? Didn't that happen a couple of times in your career?
That happened to me, sometimes. But outside
Didn't that happen during the Murray trial?
Yes.
You
remember? I was punked by Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel's guy, who was dressed up like a doctor in a lab coat, drinking fake milk like propofol. Nancy Grace, he kept saying, and I was doing a live shot. I was very polite.
And he knew it was you. He knew, obviously, it was you, right?
I don't know. He just knew I was affiliated. He knew I was affiliated with her, I guess. I was walking back to to the live shot location after court that day, and his car with all his producers, whatever, came by, and there I was walking on the street I forgot which street, near the LA courthouse, and he yelled out the window. He stuck his head out the window and yelled, "Nancy Grace!" again, even after filming me earlier in the day. It was funny.
I asked this to most attorneys. A couple of them say yes, a couple of them say no. If you were the prosecuting prosecutor, and I'll use Dwayne Cates' analysis, it was a juror that there was only if there was only one holdout during the penalty phase, then you go and you do it again. That's Dwayne Cates' opinion from Arizona. Tom Mesereau, I had him here a couple months back. He agreed with that point. Joey Jackson didn't agree with that point. A couple other people did agree with that point. Some do, some don't. Would you, Beth Carras, knowing what you know now about the case, would you retry this again?
I would not.
Reason being?
The reason being that it's really hard to get death, period, okay? Prosecutors,
right.
My understanding is they get death in maybe 15% of the cases they ask for it, or something, it's some fraction. They don't get it in most cases. It's hard. It's hard to get 12 people to agree. Unless you're in Florida, you don't need 12. You need just a simple majority. You need 7. But then the judge, it's an advisory verdict or opinion to the judge. But, in most states, you need this unanimity, and it's just really hard. And I've seen this evidence. She's the bottom line is she needs to go away to prison for life. She is a convicted, premeditated murderer. That's not going to change. It has cost the taxpayers of this county more than $3 million just for the defense. That doesn't count any of the police work and the prosecution salaries and overtime and whatever has gone into this for police and prosecution. And if she gets death, which I highly doubt, I'm watching this jury. I can't read their minds, but it's so disjointed. The case is meeting 1, 2, and 3 days a week. I'm not saying that she doesn't necessarily deserve death. I'm just saying it's time to end it. Because if this is a hung jury this time, it's over. Arizona only gets 2 shots at death. 2 shots, that's it. It's over. It's a life sentence, and the judge will decide which of the 2 life sentences, without parole or with the possibility of release after 25 years. And I think the judge will give her it's called natural life here. They don't call it LWOP or life without parole. They call it natural life. And I think that's what she would get. But I just think that it's a huge expenditure of taxpayer resources, everybody's time. It's just agony for the families to have to sit through this. Just end it already. She's not going anywhere. And she'll never be executed. Kirk Nurmi, one last thing, last week, and Kirk Nurmi, the defense attorney, and arguing, for the motion to dismiss and sanctions, everything got denied yesterday. He said she will never be executed, Your Honor. And I think truer words were never spoken. She's not going to be executed, even if she gets death.
Wow, that's Then what do you think Juan Martinez's purpose is? Does he have a vendetta? Is he listening to the family? A little combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. And, their hearts are very much in this, the prosecutor's office, and God bless them. But, sometimes you need to step outside and just look at the big picture. I've talked to so many people who are, not Jodi Arias supporters at all. They are Travis Alexander family supporters, and they just want to see this end. Lock her up. Lock her up. Send her to state prison. She's been sitting around in the county jail here in Phoenix, where I am, Maricopa County, since she got transported here. She got arrested in Wairika on July 15, 2008, and transported here a few weeks later. It's like early August 2008. This jail here is home for her. She needs to go to state prison.
I totally agree with you, and most of the attorneys that I interviewed here, I totally agree with you. Give me your take of the defense team with what they had to work with, Kirk Nurmi and Jennifer Wilmot. What is your take on their styles, I guess?
I think Jennifer Wilmot has really grown, and in the last year, the year in between the 2 trials, and she has more of a role this time around. We know that Kirk Nurmi's relationship with Jodi Arias was totally breaking down. He was trying to get out of the case. He is getting paid a ton of money because he was, I think, a legal defender or a public defender, one of those offices here, and there are two different offices here in Maricopa. And he left to go into private practice, and he wanted off the case, and the judge wouldn't let him off. I think it was not Stevens, it was the prior judge, wouldn't let him off. And he's like, well, and he didn't have a contract with the county that would allow him to get billed at, the lower rate of court-appointed attorneys. So he's billing his private rate, which is whatever, I don't know, $300 an hour, $250 an hour, which is a lot more than Jennifer Wilmot makes. In any event, that's where a lot of the money's going. I suspect he doesn't have much time to represent anyone but Jodi Arias, but that's because the judge wouldn't let him off the case. In any event, they're stuck with an overwhelming case from the prosecutor's perspective, right? I mean, we're talking about deleted photos on the camera. I mean, that included Travis Alexander's body right after she slaughtered him. She couldn't keep her mouth shut from a defense lawyer's point of view. What a nightmare.
Oh, yes.
It's the client who can't stop talking. She has all these lies, and then she finally says, 2 years later, I did it in self-defense. Hello, that's a defense lawyer's nightmare. So, they did what they could with the case, and it is no surprise that she got convicted. There's a lot of evidence of premeditation, and but I don't know that that the state's going to get death.
You don't think that? And there's been a very short list in Arizona, right, of women actually receiving death. What is it, a couple, maybe under 5?
Yeah, maybe. Gosh, there are only like 3 or 4, maybe 2, 3, 4. But let me tell you, I should know that number because Deborah Milkey just got released last year. But
yeah, for my audience,
I know
tell
Juan
us a
Martinez
little bit about Deborah Milkey?
Pardon me?
For my audience, can you tell us a little bit about the Deborah Milkey story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but Deborah Milkey, she was on death row for about 23 years. She was convicted of killing her toddler son or having her toddler son killed, and the detective who was like the lead detective and responsible for the case had a bit of a shaky past, and it was his credibility that was an issue in his case, and he claimed that she had confessed to him, but she retracted it and she denied she ever did it, and it wasn't recorded, and it was all his word that she had confessed, and that was in large part why she was convicted. That was the critical evidence. And so I think it was the federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed it, and they ordered a new trial. But since then, an Arizona appellate court has thrown it out altogether. She's not even getting a new trial; she's free because of all the misconduct on the part of the police. It falls on the state, but it was the police misconduct. So Deborah Milkey did spend 23 years in prison. Having been convicted of killing her child, but she's a free woman today. There is a woman on death row, I'm told Juan Martinez is responsible for putting there. But, you have to keep in mind that there aren't a lot of women on death row, period. Women kill differently from men. Women kill children, lovers, spouses. You don't hear about the Eileen Wuornos kind of woman very often, the serial killer. Women kill for emotional reasons. They can kill for jealousy and all that, and that's emotional. But women, when they pick their victims, it's different, and they're generally not death cases. Generally, I'm not saying that. Look at what Andrea Yates did, right? I mean, she was convicted, but then of course I was at a second
insanity.
trial.
She got the insanity defense, right?
Yeah. She was a very, very sick woman. Right.
What is it, 3 kids she killed? 2 or 3?
No,
or
5,
like
and I saw those photos. Oh, KingJordan, I saw those 5 kids. Oh, my God. She drowned them one by one in the bathtub in the same water, and then she lined them up in the bed. There was an infant, like a 6-month-old, and then her oldest, was like maybe 10 or something. She was so worn out from chasing the kids around the house, and it takes a lot of strength to drown a child. I hate to be too graphic, I'm sorry, but I was at the trial and I heard the testimony.
Okay.
And she was too weak to lift the last child out of the water and left him floating in the water. But the other 4 were in the bed with the infant in the arms of the oldest. And she lined them up and then called her husband. And he came home. So
wow.
It was
wow.
awful,
Wow.
just awful.
So
she thought that TV was talking to her and giving her messages. I mean, she really, really was sick. And she's incarcerated. I mean, she's institutionalized now.
Oh, my. But getting back to Jodi, I think Casey Anthony could relax. She's like nowhere to be heard from. No, in other words, like 2 years ago at this time, everything was Casey. Or 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was. Everybody was Casey. Now you think of the most hated girl, I would tend to go with Jodi right now at this particular moment.
Certainly when this case was televised live on HLN in 2013, it was all Jodi. I mean, and the courtroom was full every day, and everybody, it was Jodi. People got Jodi fatigue after a while, and then the judge wanted to put the kibosh on what she thought, what she didn't like that in 2013, which was the cyber world, and social media was just going crazy against Jodi, and some of the defense witnesses were threatened. The defense in this retrial claims that 14 witnesses they want to call in the mitigation penalty phase will not testify in court, 14 of them because of the 2013 trial and the cyberbullying. And, I've never quite seen these issues come up in a courtroom like that. Social media, blew up in the last 10 years when I first started covering televised trials. I mean, it didn't exist. Twitter, Facebook didn't exist. So, I've seen a change, and people are very informed, and you don't have to have a televised trial to stay informed anymore. But it's not the same in this retrial. The courtroom is not full. Only local media are here. There is a producer from HLN, CNN here. And then I'm here for my own website, KarasOnCrime.com. I don't work for Turner Broadcasting anymore. But that's
Karas with a K.
KarasOnCrime.com.
Karas oncrime.com. Very good website.
Right,
yes.
right. And it's all Jodi Arias right now. And I shoot a video with some, and analyzing. I blog from the courtroom minute by minute. I have the court documents up there, photos. There are still photos out of the courtroom. So anyway, it's sort of one-stop shopping for Jodi Arias. But it costs $5.99 a month. But I am going to start putting more trials on there. Probably Aaron Hernandez, maybe James Holmes, and some others.
You covered that, right? You covered Hernandez. Oh, I'm thinking of Menendez. I'm sorry. Menendez.
Yeah, no, I'm Hernandez. Yeah, I've been covering it from afar, but I'm getting a lot of the court documents. And I'll be putting a lot of stuff up on my site about that. And I'm credentialed, so I don't know if I'll go up there. The opening statements are going to be while I'm still here in Phoenix.
We also have a fascinating trial. I do want to play the clip of the Colorado movie theater shooting, which happened in the summer of 2012. Let's hear this clip, and then we'll come back, and I want to get your take on it.
During a fight scene in The Dark Knight Rises, Batman exhorts Catwoman to put away her weapon. No killing, he says. No guns. Sadly, in the Century 16 Theater last night, life did not imitate that bit of art, and the midnight premiere of that film became a killing ground. Tonight, families are reeling, a young man is in custody, and police are trying to figure out how to disarm the suspect's apartment loaded with explosive booby traps. ABC's David Wright begins our coverage tonight from the Denver suburb of Aurora. David?
Good evening, Bill. We're just a few yards away from the multiplex where that massacre took place. At this hour, the coroner is at a local high school with families who have been agonizing all day about their missing loved ones. And outside that high school, as you can see, people are crying. The midnight showing of The Dark Knight Rises. Fans across the country, a summons as irresistible as the bat signal. At the Century 16 Theater here in Aurora, the crowd included Jennifer Seeger, seated in the second row, a young couple with their two kids, and Jessica Gowie, a 25-year-old aspiring sportscaster who goes by the professional name Jessica Redfield. She tweeted her friends from inside the theater. "Movie doesn't start for 20 minutes, she wrote, excitedly, in capital letters. The last tweet she'd ever send at 11:37. About 12:05, right as the credits started to roll, a man in the front row of Theater 9 got up, pretending to take a phone call. He went out the emergency exit, propping open the door behind him. 24-year-old James Egan Holmes was apparently gearing up for an action scene of his own. Police say he had with him a Smith & Wesson assault rifle, a Remington pump-action shotgun, and 2 Glock semi-automatic pistols. 12:39, this was the scene on the screen. Christian Bale acting opposite Michael Caine as Holmes came back through the emergency exit wearing a gas mask. Witnesses say he threw a green canister into the crowd, filling the theater with smoke.
Your eyes are burning, it makes you want to just close them, and then you can't breathe and just makes you want to cough.
As though reenacting a scene from a Dark Knight comic, witnesses say Holmes fired into the air and then started shooting into the crowd.
The first clear sign of it was when the guy that was sitting right next to me actually got shot in the chest.
And all the bullet casings kept falling on my forehead. They were like singeing my forehead. At that moment, I just remember thinking, I'm not going to die in here. Me and my kids, we are not going to die in here. I need to get them out. At that point, he takes his gun and he walks a little further, takes a couple steps, and he points it at me. At that point, he has a rifle in my face. There was a moment where my daughter tripped, and I just pulled her up, and I was just dragging her, and I was just thinking, we just got to get out. I just got to get out the doors, and even if I just fall dead, just get my kids out of here. It was just so horrible.
Christine, I got 7 down in Theater 9. 7 down.
Police arrived on the scene less than 2 minutes after the rampage started, but it was chaos.
What's happening? Oh my God.
I've got a child victim. I need rescue at the back door of Theater 9 now.
Yelling fire in a crowded theater may be enough to cause a stampede. Opening fire meant utter pandemonium.
We go out, and the first thing we see is a 13, 14-year-old girl with a bullet wound in her leg.
According to witnesses, Holmes tried to blend in with the crowd.
You see, like within the theater, people were just running, and he was just walking. He was just walking.
Mr. Holmes was apprehended outside in the back of the theater, and he was apprehended with 3 weapons.
Holmes immediately surrendered. Police observed his hair was dyed orange. He told them, "I am the Joker." He also told them the movie theater, his apartment, and his car were booby-trapped, just like the comic book villain would do. A full hour after the rampage began, the story broke over the airwaves. By then, 18 ambulances were there, triaging the victims and transporting the most serious cases to 6 local hospitals. 12 people killed and 58 injured, 70 victims in all. So many, the police turned the back seats of their cruisers into makeshift ambulances.
Back is full of blood. I don't know if that matters or not. Full of what? Blood.
By 2 a.m., Holmes' apartment block was evacuated as the bomb squad started assessing the booby traps. They were extensive.
I see an awful lot of wires, trip wires, jars full of ammunition, jars full of liquid, things that look like mortar rounds. We have a lot of challenges to get in there safely.
Today, inside dozens of hospital rooms, survivors struggle to make sense of all this.
It was cold and calculated, definitely. It seemed very methodical, just the rate at which he was firing and how he wasn't really moving position. He was just like unloading into the crowd.
And all day long, 10 bodies remained inside the building while law enforcement secured the scene. Their families and friends left, waiting and wondering.
Tell me where he is, okay? Find my son. I don't know where he is. Okay, somebody find him and call us. Tell him to call us.
His son never called. Sadly, Alex Sullivan is dead. Late in the day, the authorities finally started to bring out the bodies. Among the dead, Jessica Gowie Redfield, that aspiring sportscaster who was so excited before the movie. Tonight, her mother spoke with Diane Sawyer.
My life is forever changed.
and forever damaged by one person's horrible, violent choice.
Astonishingly, this was not Jessica's first time in harm's way. Last month, she happened to be in a Toronto food court when a gunman went on a deadly rampage there. Her friend Peter Burns said that experience led her to make the most of every day. In her blog, she wrote, "I was reminded we don't know when or where our time on earth will end, when or where we will breathe our last breath." This morning, when Peter opened up his Facebook page, there was a message from Jessica.
It said, "Hey."
A message she wrote just before the movie.
It goes, "Hey, are you guys back in town?" Just it was her checking in. And
by the time you got that message, she was already dead.
Yeah.
I'm David Wright for Nightline in Aurora, Colorado.
Okay, that clip is courtesy of ABC News. We're talking to Beth Karas at KarasOnCrime.com.
Right.
Say it. KarasOnCrime.com. Is that it?
That's it. Yes.
Okay. What a horrendous, sick person, and that trial is slated for this year. What is your opinion? I mean, is this a what do you do with this case if you're the defense?
Well, you know what you do with this. This is what you do with a case if you're representing James Holmes. You fight tooth and nail to save his life. You don't challenge guilt, and that's exactly what they're doing. They are asserting an insanity defense, which means he's saying, "I did it, but I'm sick in the head, so don't hold me criminally responsible." So that's what this is all about. And there have been psychiatric evaluations, and the reports are under seal. We don't know the details. But it's a state case outside of Denver. And in early December, December 11th, summonses were mailed out to 9,000 people in Arapahoe County. Mm-hmm. That's 1 in 50 people in the county got a summons. Now, they're going to start jury selection next Tuesday. But
next
13
Tuesday.
people were, next Tuesday, January 20th. And it's expected to last up to 5 months. Opening statements in the Holmes case are expected to be end of May.
Televised.
Yeah.
I hear.
I gotta get the details on that. If there's any delay or live, or if you can only record it and show it later. But that should be an interesting case. But it's not about liability. It's guilt. However, the prosecution still has to prove it. So we're still going to see the evidence. All the evidence of what he did, and sort of a reconstruction of how involved it was. So and then the defense will put on their psychiatric evidence, and then the state will rebut it. The real battle in the Holmes trial will be from the defense case to the state's rebuttal case. That's the case in any insanity case. The battle of the experts comes once the defense asserts the defense. But a couple of potential jurors were excused right away. 12 people who got a summons were witnesses. Already they're on the witness list, and a 13th person, another one is an employee of the DA's office. So they sent out 9,000, but they're down 13 right now, and I'm sure people have been dropping off because people have lives and jobs and their own businesses that are affected if they have to be away for long periods of time. So, but that's our summer trial.
Absolutely, and Tom Mesereau thinks if this case is televised, that's not good because Mr. James Holmes, like the BTK killer here in New York, I believe, he will love every minute of the theater, if you will, the coverage. Your opinion
Wanting
on this
the
case
attention.
being televised? Yes.
Well, that's how I made my living for almost 20 years, was covering cases that almost all were televised. Scott Peterson's wasn't televised, and Jerry Sandusky's wasn't televised, but almost everything I did was televised. And, I've seen everything. I've seen lawyers be theatrical, defendants liking the attention. I want to say victims, most of them were murder cases, but families are considered victims. They for the most part were very dignified and shied away from cameras. But I think that the camera doesn't have the big effect that a lot of people think it has. I have seen craziness outside of a courthouse and theatrical lawyers when there was no camera, like Michael Skapel, the Kennedy nephew, who was convicted of killing Martha Moxley, his neighbor, when they were 15. He spent years in prison. It was overturned. He's supposedly getting a new trial, and he's out now. But that was crazy. It was a well-attended trial. There were like 100 cameras and journalists outside the courthouse every day. The lawyers would step up to the cameras and talk. Sometimes Martha Moxley, the victim's mother, Dorothy, would get up and say a few words. And there was no camera inside the courtroom. So I just think that if the personalities of the participants lend themselves to liking attention, I mean, the camera is going to please them, but they're going to like the attention anyway. And if it's a case that the public is following, like James Holmes, with or without a camera, you're going to have theatrics. I don't know. Holmes is going to like it when he's looking at the courtroom full of people. That has nothing to do with the camera. He's not going to be watching himself, but he's going to look at a courtroom full of people.
He was an educated person, young man, right?
Yeah. He was
college, everything.
He was a graduate student in, I think, neuroscience at the time. Yeah, very smart.
Unbelievable, a tragedy. Very important question I got to ask you, Beth. Did you ever get offered a drink by Bill Cosby?
No, but how troubling are those allegations?
Oh, man.
No. Very troubling.
Yes. It's very troubling. What do you do if you're an attorney? Do you just keep hushing? And, I mean, he's 77 now. There was someone in the statue, I think something in 2008 with Hugh, that happened in Hugh Hefner's house, allegedly, but they did not want to charge. Did you hear about that one?
No, I don't think I heard about that one. I mean, I kind of, because of the Arias case, I sort of lost track after Beverly Johnson came out. She was, I think, the last one just before the holidays that I remember reading about and watching. You get, the more women come out saying these similar things, right? I mean, the more likely it is these are true allegations, right? There's strength in numbers. And what are the chances that these women who are going public, who are identifying themselves,
not looking for money either.
Yeah, and incur the wrath of somebody as famous and wealthy as Bill Cosby, and there's a reason why women who are rape victims don't report, because they feel they'll never be believed, and sometimes people will accuse them of, I don't know, just looking for money, that it really was consensual, but now you've got some sort of vendetta, some bone to pick here, and it really hurts it hurts people who are truly raped when there are fake allegations or reports, or women become fearful. Well, these women were coming forward, or some did and were reportedly hushed, but they weren't coming forward because he was so powerful. They didn't think they believed. Maybe they doubted themselves. Like, oh, wait a minute, I took last thing I remember. I took a sip of something, So I think that these stories that are very similar have a ring of truth to them.
Yeah, I mean, you hear Felicia Rashad, his wife on the popular 80s sitcom, the 80s show, The Cosby Show. She came to his defense, sort of. She said, what I saw was fun and this and that, and I'm thinking, this is not going to be seen in front of witnesses. I mean, I know she must have a good bond with Mr. Cosby, but when there's this much numbers, I never heard of a case with this much strength in numbers. That's what is very troublesome.
Right. And all this aside, I mean, this is now going to be his legacy, and it's disgusting. These allegations are disgusting, and assuming they're true, and I personally believe that they are. But he has done such good work, all this aside, right? And it's just so tragic that he was a bore, with women, because he's been a great role model, and he's, this emphasis on education. He's based in Western Massachusetts, which is where I originally come from, and I know his son Ennis is buried, not that many towns from where I grew up, and he got a graduate degree from University of Massachusetts, and I was living in Massachusetts, and he's well known, not just in my community, because he bought a lot of land there and a house, and his son is buried there, and it was very shocking for everyone to read these allegations.
And the wife, just like in Jerry Sandusky case, she's in either full denial or 30 people lying. And everything is a total fabrication. And Bill Cosby is the most unluckiest person alive, according to the wife.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, well, it's interesting you compare to Jerry Sandusky's wife. I would see Dottie Sandusky every day walking into court, sitting in court, and I don't know if she was in denial. Excuse me. He certainly wasn't doing any of that stuff in front of her, but these boys, I saw them testify in the Sandusky trial, and Dottie was upstairs. One boy, I remember his testimony, he said he was screaming, but she may have thought there were a lot of games and stuff, and foosball and pool and various games down in the cellar. She may have thought they were just playing and screaming, and he was actually screaming in pain, and she was upstairs and didn't do anything. He really faulted her for that, but maybe Dottie didn't know what was going on. I don't know.
Did you see Sandusky's mannerism as these young men now, I guess, were testifying, and the emotion to him?
No, there was one when I remember when one of the guys, well, they're young men now, but they were boys then. When one of them was testifying, it was so weird. Sandusky sat at the table with his eyes closed. No, was it McCleary? It was either the assistant coach or it was one of the boys. I think it was one of the boys. It might have been the assistant coach describing what he saw, which is he heard the slapping sound, and he saw bare legs, and then he saw the two of them, Sandusky and a boy, come out of the shower area together. Sandusky was sitting there with his eyes closed, and it was like he was reliving it. He was hearing the description on the witness stand, and I'm not the only one. There's one of the lawyers who noticed that. There are a few other people, and I actually talked to
the lady that was doing the sketch said that he was reliving it. I don't know exactly what she said, but to paraphrase, the sketch artist who was covering in session at the time, she said he was smiling at some of the testimony, almost like he was reliving it.
Yeah, you're talking about Christine Cornell. Okay, so that was her observation, and it was mine too. And I actually spoke with one of the prosecutors about it, and he saw it as well. He's like, yeah, did you see that? It was as though he was in a dream state going back in time. Look, we're trying to get inside Sandusky's head to say that's what he was thinking. I don't know, but he had that look on his face, his eyes were closed, and the testimony was very descriptive at that point.
Yes, indeed. I'm not saying Jerry Sandusky is innocent by any charge. I think he's guilty on every charge. But do you think this trial was rushed? What was it? He was charged in November of 2011, and the trial was 7 months later?
Yeah, it was
pretty
rushed.
Quick.
Actually, it was rushed. And there were so many victims, and the defense was working right up until, and in fact, I seem to recall that they didn't have time to read all the discovery they had. By the time the trial started, it was pushed on them. So, and I remember thinking, look, I don't want to, do him any favors for Jerry Sandusky, except, when you're going to label someone a convicted felon and take their liberty away and lock them up for the rest of their lives, it has to be a fair fight. It has to be a fair fight, and I really didn't think that was fair to push it to trial as fast. but as they did. But now that I'm remembering it now, it seemed to me that the judge was under pressure. They brought him in from the Pittsburgh area to central Pennsylvania. It seemed like he might have been under pressure to get the trial over with before the next school year started. We were there in the summer.
Yeah, I heard that.
You know, the football practice was going to start, and it's like, yeah, get this over with. We want him locked up, and we don't want this trial hanging around the community. And you know, that's kind of
what
happened.
about his defense team? Oh my! I mean, there was one thing where the reporter was asking, and he was saying, "You'll have to see. This is a little bit like All My Children." He was making reference to doing daytime shows. During a reporter was asking him something about the trial, and he was having some fun with the reporter, and I'm thinking to myself, this is you got Jerry Sandusky's life in your hands, and you're laughing and giggling, and I even heard Tom Mesereau say on Bill O'Reilly, totally improper, and he also said while they were out on deliberations, I will have a heart attack if Jerry Sandusky is not convicted.
Oh,
what's
great.
your opinion on Joseph Amendola?
Well, he's a nice guy, but this is probably the trial of his career. Like, he'll never get a trial that is going to catapult him onto the national and world stage, and he probably just got a little bit lost in himself. I mean, he's a good enough lawyer. He is. I've heard good things about him, but he knew. It's a small community. He could walk into the DA's office and sit down with DAs and cut deals in his cases, and in a way that you can't do that in bigger cities because you don't have that kind of rapport, that relationship. And of course, he couldn't do that in this case. And so, I think maybe some of the things you just quoted him as saying, they sound kind of inappropriate. You don't tell people you buy if he's not convicted. You just don't do that. You just don't do that.
Crazy story. Okay, one more. Yes, absolutely. Want my audience to hear about this Boston Marathon killing. Let's play this clip, and I want to get your take on the other side.
Arias and I may not be able to speak right now, but he is revealing so much more about how and why he carried out those marathon bombings with his brother. All the communication writing except one word. When asked if he could afford a lawyer, Jahar said no.
And the 19-year-old suspect has been formally charged now with using a weapon of mass destruction and malicious destruction of property. And that also, could face the death penalty.
No question about it. ABC's Brian Ross is in Boston with exclusive new details on the interrogation. Good morning, Brian.
Well, good morning, George and Robin. The 19-year-old suspect has admitted his role in the bombings, speaking with or communicating with that special team of FBI agents who did not have to give him his legal rights. The suspect also revealed, according to authorities, much of the how and the why of the deadly bomb blast.
For all the fear and drama that the attacks produced, the younger brother reportedly told agents it was almost entirely done from the internet, homegrown, with no direction from overseas. They used an Al-Qaeda internet description of how to make a pressure cooker bomb.
They took a very simple recipe and then targeted the Boston Marathon.
The decision to target the marathon came only in the last few weeks, Jahar Tsarnaev told agents, according to authorities. According to the criminal complaint against Jahar, seen here at an ATM machine, trying to get cash from the account of a man whose car he stole, he confessed to the bombing, telling the victim, "I did that."
We have destitute people.
As to inspiration, authorities tell ABC News Jahar said he and his brother were following the internet preachings of Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born jihadist who has been dead now for more than a year and a half.
It appears to me that the older brother was particularly influenced by Awlaki.
And despite his family ties and trips to Chechnya, it was the older brother's hatred of America that supposedly motivated the attack, his brother reportedly said.
And believed that the U.S., including through its wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, were killing Muslims.
Hours after the younger brother talked, federal authorities swarmed an area behind a Cambridge rug store looking for more explosives or the place where the bombs might have been built. The FBI also hopes to get additional insight from Tamerlan's wife, seen over the weekend leaving the family apartment. A Rhode Island native, she converted to Islam and changed her name from Catherine to Karima. Her family lawyer said Monday she was shocked to learn of her husband's role and had no idea until the FBI first released those surveillance pictures of him and named him a suspect.
In fact, the lawyer says the wife doesn't speak any Russian and didn't really know what was going on. As to the younger brother's claims and statements to the FBI, investigators don't necessarily take at face value all that he has said. He has every reason to try to minimize his own role, and the investigation into possible ties to overseas groups in Russia remains a central focus of the case, George.
And Brian, talk about living double lives. We know that the younger brother was out partying on Wednesday night, and now we've learned more about where the older brother, Tamerlan, was the day before the shootout.
Exactly. On that Thursday, the day the FBI released his surveillance photo, he was at home taking care of his infant daughter while his wife was at work.
Unbelievable, Beth Arias. This trial, Boston bomber. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, you know, there's a lot of action in Massachusetts right now with the Aaron Hernandez trial south of Boston injury selection, and with this Boston Marathon bombing trial in federal court in Boston taking place at the same time. So jurors, let's see, 1,350 jurors were summoned, and they filled out questionnaires for 3 days, 28-page questionnaires, starting on January 5th. And on the third day, the last day of filling out questionnaires, the Paris shootings, those tragedies in Paris happened. And so the defense made a motion to delay the trial. They're like, Judge, there are too many parallels. Two brothers in this case. They were both influenced by the writings of the same now dead al-Qaeda leader, and the judge just said no, you know. And so the jury selection started today with the actual questioning. But in federal court, the judge does the questioning, not the lawyers, right? And sometimes they make exceptions and they let the lawyers do some questioning, but the judge is doing it, and is doing it individually for the first 20 jurors. And they're having a hard time with some of them, at least from what I've been reading, because some are like, no, I got too much, you know, he's guilty, I've got, you know, too strong an opinion, I can't put it aside. Others are like, I will never impose a death penalty, I don't care what, I will never do it. So, you know, people have to be able to set aside their opinions. This is how we started our conversation tonight with Arias. Set aside your opinions, and also you have to be able to impose a death penalty. You have to be death qualified in order to.
Yes, prosecutors can seek the death penalty, but normally out in Massachusetts, they can't unless it's a federal, right?
Right. Massachusetts, my home state, is one of the states in the minority in the United States who did not have the death penalty, and they got rid of it, you know, several decades ago, maybe in the 70s, I can't remember. But there are several crimes that qualify for death under federal law, and this is a federal trial.
So, you're a Boston native? Would never
Western
tell by your.
No, Western Massachusetts, Bill Cosby territory, close to where Bill Cosby bought land and a house where Ennis is buried, but not the same town. But that's where I grew up.
Isn't it sad now when you think of Bill Cosby, automatically think, you know, negative stuff, whereas before maybe the Jell-O commercial, the reruns on TV Land. I mean, the legacy. That's the only thing you had right, Melissa Rashad. The legacy is done, and there's nothing to save it.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up watching the Cosby Show. It's an entertaining show, and you know, he represented what was right in this world, and just to hear about these horrific women, who I believe, I mean, can there be a few that jumping on the train? Possibly. You were once a New York prosecutor, right?
Yes, I was in Manhattan. You know, I mean, we are talking as though the man, you know, did it and he's guilty, but I have to tell you that, and these are our opinions, we're not stating facts, these are just opinions.
We can, yes.
Right,
Allegedly.
but it just doesn't look good for him, you know. It just, you know, Beverly Johnson comes out saying, look, she refused the cappuccino that he was insisting she drink. Or she took one sip of it, right, and started to feel a little bit woozy or something, and she took off on him. But so she wasn't actually assaulted, but she felt he had something, lurid in mind, and got out of there because she sort of smelled a rat. Anyway, that kind of sealed it for me. It was like Beverly Johnson,
Right. At least in the court of public opinion, your opinion is that he is guilty. And Gloria Allred has challenged him to waive his statue. Like Mr. I don't know if you heard about Alan Dershowitz was recently accused, and he came out fighting, and he said he would waive everything about a week ago.
Yeah,
did you hear about that?
That's in a different case. Yeah, I did. I read a little bit about it. Yeah, Alan Dershowitz was
he came out swinging.
underage.
I believe Alan. He say the timeline that he had to prove. He just seemed credible, and he's a great defense lawyer. He was on the dream team, and speaking of that, that will be 20 years that O.J. was acquitted coming up this June. So last year was the Bronco case.
The acquittal. Yeah, well, the trial started 20 years ago this month in January,
right.
And the acquittal was October 3rd, 1995, because I was in Las Vegas when he was convicted on October 3rd. 2008, 13 years to the day of his acquittal, he got convicted of the hotel robbery and kidnapping. And I just remember thinking, what a jerk. He had the whole, he was acquitted of double murder when, most of the country thought he was guilty. And he was the luckiest guy in the world to be free, and he just messed up 13 years later for a robbery.
There were some conspiracies in that case with numbers. Do you remember?
Yes, the crime happened on September 13, 2007. He gets convicted on the 13th anniversary of his acquittal, and the jury deliberated for 13 hours. And I was there.
Wow.
I was in the courtroom when he got convicted. He was out on bail, so I used to talk to him in the hall. Now and then. I was there with Dominic Dunn. And I remember Dominic, who passed away in 2009, August 2009. Dominic saying to me, I know, because Dominic hated O.J. during his murder trial, right? He was writing Vanity Fair, and he was like, he was a victim's advocate. He's like, I kind of feel sorry for the guy now. He's really broken, because he and I, Dominic and I, were able to see O.J. up close and talk to him a little bit, and just see it, just have a different perspective on things. But neither one of us thought that he was innocent of the murders.
Oh no, the evidence was overwhelming. Number one, and who is the murderer? At least in some of these questions, you have somebody else that you can point to. Like Casey Anthony said, it was a slam dunk, and I do believe Casey Anthony had something to do with it. But at least the jurors to look to the father as reasonable doubt. With O.J., there was no reasonable doubt, in my opinion, even though they raised a reasonable doubt. What was your opinion of
they succeeded
Casey
it. Yeah. Well, let me just answer one thing about O.J. DNA evidence was fairly new at that time. It was 1995. It had been around for some years, but wasn't something that was it wasn't a household term. People didn't understand it, weren't talking about it much, and so the defense was able to really make hay with that. You had the combination of three people's blood in the Bronco, OJ's and the two victims. You don't contaminate a scene and you have three people's blood like that. Yeah, that just doesn't happen. Anyway, he was at the murder scene, and his blood was in the car. He cut himself, cutting them, and that's the end of story. Okay, so Casey Anthony, did you ask me about?
Yes, your opinion on that trial.
Well,
fiasco.
It took the wind out of me when she got. I was in the courtroom when she got acquitted, and when I heard the first not guilty, I thought, well, surely, because there were other counts, and there were lesser included, surely there's going to be a guilty somewhere. Criminally negligent homicide, something.
They could have went to something like that, right? They could have prosecuted.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they could have had something little. Something where she she may not have done any more time. It might have been a 2-year sentence, and she had been in for 3 years already. She would have gotten time served. Instead, they just, convict her on the 4 misdemeanors of lying to the police. It knocked the wind out of me. I swear. I sat back in my seat, and the media were up in the balcony area, and I just took a deep breath, and I exhaled. I was like, whoa! I couldn't process it. And I learned later that the jury foreperson was this young man who had been he was a gym teacher or coach or something. And I remember one day in the middle of the trial, as I sat up in the balcony and watching the jury filing out and the courtroom emptying, that guy who would later become the foreperson, he was in the back row of the jury box, and he stood, and the other jurors had walked out, and he just looked across at at Casey, and the defense table was exactly across from the jury, because the courtroom was set up like an L, if you remember, the prosecution, and then the defense was a long defense table directly across from the jury box, which is not normally how courtrooms are set up. And he stood there, and he kind of lingered looking at her, and I thought, oh boy, is there a little chemistry going on here? And then, of course, come to find out, he led the jury deliberations in the acquittal. But I was surprised they didn't find her guilty of something. But I have prosecutor friends, assistant DAs in Manhattan, who said to me, it was a tough case. And Baez did a good job in defending her. And
he did.
You don't know how she died or when.
And Training Mason?
Well,
I think Training Mason did a good job.
Yeah, well, actually, Jose Baez was, not as skilled in the middle of the trial, but he was very good in his opening and closing. He has a gift for talking to people and talking to jurors, and he knew the message. And
the judge
he delivered
recently
it.
said that on an interview. The judge, I don't have his name.
Delvin Perry.
Yeah, he was on the Today Show, and he said he's like a used car salesman, to quote him. But I happened to watch Dateline yesterday. I happened to watch.
I don't know if Judge Perry meant to insult Jose Baez, but Baez convinced those jurors, so.
He did something right.
Tom Mesereau did a good job. Yeah.
Tom Mesereau. You've seen my pal Tom Mesereau in action. How is he?
Well, in full disclosure here, I'm actually pretty friendly with Tom Mesereau. I got to know him covering.
Yes. He's been on the show about 20 times.
Oh, good.
But,
Robert Blake's preliminary hearing in February of 2003 is when I first saw Tom Mesereau in action, and I was there for 3 weeks, and I remember first saying in one of my live shots, wow, this guy's Los Angeles' big secret here, because this is a good lawyer. Where did he come from? And then, a few days later, I'm saying he's California's big secret. And by the end of the preliminary hearing, I was saying he's the country's big secret. I just was quite impressed with him. He's really, he's definitely in the top tier of the lawyers I've seen over the years.
In his Michael Jackson trial, what did you think of his closing arguments?
I wasn't at that. I had just finished covering Scott Peterson, and so I wanted to go, but my bosses were like, you can't be the only face at Court TV. So they sent Savannah Guthrie, and Diane Dimond was always going to go. They had 2 correspondents, so I didn't get to go. But so I didn't hear it, unfortunately. I was only there for Michael Jackson's arraignments. There was 2 arraignments, both on the complaint and then again on the indictment or something, but that's it.
And that was with Mark Garagos, right?
Yeah. Well, one was Garagos, and I think one was, I don't know if they were both Garagos or was one Tom. No, they must have been both Garagos. Yeah. And Ben Braff.
Tom was brought in 2004. He told me.
Okay. Yeah. Right after he quit on Robert Blake.
Right. There was a falling out with Blake and him and Randy, and there was a meeting in Florida. One thing led to another, and they looked at Jericho's record, and they looked at I'm saying a very poor record, Tom Mesereau said, and they decided to go with Tom, and it turned out to be a winning strategy. But I hear that he's brilliant in the courtroom. I never got a chance to see him, but I will check out. He was on the prelims in the Robert Blake, right? And he got him out on bond.
Yeah, that's when I saw him, February 2003. Yeah, I was there for 3 weeks. That was a full-blown preliminary hearing, and Tom he was masterful in his cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses. While I was there, Phil Spector killed Lana Clarkson, and I really didn't know too much about Phil Spector. Of course, I would return in 2007 to Los Angeles and cover Spector's first trial for 5 months, and Spector didn't get convicted, though, until early 2009, the end of his second trial.
That didn't get too much play, the Phil Spector trial, the second one. No. And the OJ didn't get half as much as the 94-95 trial. Agreed?
Right.
The 2000 trial.
People get, once they kind of know the story, they, we have found in the old days, the now defunct Court TV, that once people knew the story, the retrials didn't do so well because it was just going over, what people knew already. I mean, people always tune into verdicts. Like, even Jodi Arias, people aren't that interested because it's not really that much new material. There's a core group of people out there, like, my subscribers and others who are following it on social media. But the interest, the media will be back when if she gets back on the stand or when there are closing arguments and verdict time, verdict watch and the verdict, it'll be crazy again at the courthouse.
And before we let you guys, saw you on 48 Hours, the YouTube version of 48 Hours, I think it was, and you were covering Drew Peterson. I just wanted to get your take on that case, and that where they let in hearsay evidence for the first time, I guess, ever, right?
Well, they let in, let me think, it was, they created a hearsay law to, basically, it seems, to be able to prosecute Drew Peterson because his fourth wife went missing, but she had made statements about the killing of his third wife, and he was prosecuted for the third wife. Remember, she drowned in a bathtub, allegedly, and it was ruled an accident, and she was buried. And after the fourth wife disappeared and she was fearful for her life, it is believed he killed her, but he hasn't been charged with it. And she had talked to a minister and a few other people, knowing that Drew had actually killed the third wife because she was already with him by then. He was getting a divorce from the third wife. He was already living with this young Stacy, who would become his wife. And she remembers him coming home in the middle of the night wearing dark clothes and putting some women's clothes in the washer, and they weren't hers. And he said, well, the police are going to come and talk to you, and this is what you need to say. And he stood by her side, and he sat with her when the police talked to her to make sure that she didn't say anything wrong, but she knew that he had killed her. And she told this reverend everything she knew, but it was not admissible because it wouldn't have been admissible without this law because the defense couldn't cross-examine. It's like somebody's repeating what Stacy said. It's hearsay. Hearsay is not admissible unless there are indicia of reliability. You can't repeat what someone said because that statement can't be cross-examined by the speaker, by the original person, unless it comes within an exception to hearsay, and those exceptions basically say, make it reliable. And this didn't fall within one of them. So they created a law to allow it.
Wow.
And that's
do you think that was fair?
Really,
from a legal standpoint, do you think that was fair?
Well, I have to, I got to remember all the details because at the time I did.
Put aside the emotional, put aside, that he might have killed her or was convicted for killing, and put aside all that, and it's John Doe, and this happened. Just from a legality standpoint, do you think that was fair?
Well, it does.
I mean, he looked like he was a maniac with the camera. The way he acted he was his own worst enemy. He acted nuts.
Absolutely.
He was out on trial, going on radio shows and went a date with Drew Peterson and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he acted like a total clown. But
yes, he did.
Do you think that?
Look, without that law, he'd still be out on the streets. Without that law, because they could not have convicted him of killing his third wife after she had already been buried. And the cause of death was manner of death was accident. And he's never been charged with killing Stacy, who disappeared, and maybe was taken out of her house in a barrel. So he really may have committed the perfect crimes. So the idea that a law was enacted in order to get him is a little distasteful, and a little suspicious, but it's held up on appeal. As far as I know, at this point, it's held up, that law is held up on appeal. So, he's probably done. Probably.
If that other girl, I think Stacy, like the last girl, didn't go missing, he still would have been, none of this would have been brought back to trial, right?
Correct. That's right.
So it was,
unless he eventually divorced him and decided to rat him out and testify against him. But, well, who knows how things would have played out. Anyway, he's bad news. He's really bad news.
Yes, and you were in the courtroom for that one, right?
Yes, I was. There was no camera. We couldn't even bring our devices in the courtroom. We had to lock our telephones and iPads in a little locker outside the courtroom. There were lockers, like a school locker, and we had to put our stuff in there and then go in the courtroom with like pen and paper. It's crazy.
Before we let you go, also you were featured in today's Fingerprints digital newspaper. Can you tell us, the audience, about that?
Oh, yes. Did you see that? That was Condé Nast, the publisher of Vanity Fair, Vogue, Architectural Digest. They have a digital newsletter which is free. It comes out Monday through Friday, and it's called Fingerprints. And they profile a person who is, entrepreneurial, doing something new or creative. And I was featured today because I have started this subscription website for doing my legal reporting, and and it's my little business. So they asked me like 20 questions, and they started the sentence, and I had to finish it, and they picked 10 of them. So that's the profile. It's like, these days I'm inspired by, and I said, the change in digital programming, sort of replacing traditional TV viewing. That's what I'm inspired by. But it's things like I collect books, and what's my favorite art, and what's the best gift I ever gave, and what's my favorite day of the year, and what's my next adventure. So it's just a little personal thing about me. If you click on the picture of me, it'll bring you to my website.
Oh, that's awesome. And how is the weather over there in Phoenix?
It was in the 70s today. No complaints at all. Where are you, by the way? Where are you?
I am in Brooklyn. Good old Brooklyn,
okay.
New York.
I'm a man.
So we're lucky if we get 17 at times. It wasn't so bad today. Yes, you could say that again. Beth, it was definitely a pleasure to have you on to talk about all these great trials. I would like to have you on again one day.
Great.
And,
great, my pleasure. We'll talk again. Lots to talk about.
And one more time, that website is...
my last name, KarisOnCrime.com. KarisOnCrime.com.
And what can they find of interest? These
the site is set up for me to come to Phoenix and report on Jodi Arias, but it is being developed right now, and I'm going to launch in a few weeks more trials on it. But right now, there's no camera in the courtroom, so you'll see, if you subscribe, you'll go to the member homepage and you'll see my daily updates. I'm blogging from the courtroom and putting other posts up about the case. You can get almost a transcript of the trial with my analysis. In addition, I put up videos on trial days. I shoot a 20 to 30-minute video. It's just me talking to the camera, but I'm analyzing the day and answering questions, which I collect during the day from subscribers. I get courtroom photos every day. I put them up. I also have all sorts of the court documents, and I have analysis in writing that I've done. Let's see, what else is on there? And that's mainly what's on there. So it's blog posts, video, photos.
You have the videos of photos. You're on YouTube a lot. There's a lot of you on YouTube, I should say.
Yeah, but I don't have links to that yet. This is just videos I shoot for this trial. I am going to be putting documents. I've just ordered a bunch of Aaron Hernandez documents. I'm putting up the James Holmes documents. I want it to be a place where people can
those are two
read
about
the... Pardon me?
two fascinating trials in the same
yeah,
area.
two good ones.
Well, not
and
in the same
more
area,
coming.
excuse me, in the same year. And more coming, yes.
But
yes,
also
Aaron
one last
Hernandez.
thing. Yes, and one last thing. I got a hold of Jodi's journals, 8 volumes, 564 pages, and I put them up, and those aren't out there.
God.
So you can read her journals during her relationship with Travis Alexander. So that's a good little find.
That must
too.
be an interesting read. I invite my audience to go to Karis. Let me get it ready down. Say it one last time for me.
Karis on Crime. My name, KarisOnCrime.com.
That's it. Remember that, audience. KarisOnCrime.com. Beth, thanks a million for joining us. I'll keep in touch with you, and it was a pleasure.
Great. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure as well. Take care.
Okay. And a big thanks to Beth Karis. Next week we should be joined with Joey Jackson and Richard Herman also to come. So stay tuned to KingJordan Radio. I want to give a big props to Beth Karis. Fascinating stories she has. Wonderful lady. And go to her website and enjoy. Tuesdays, of course, is Wrestling Night at 9 p.m. So check us out then. Thanks for listening to KingJordan Radio.